eBird is one of the best tools a birder can have online. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I would use eBird in 2026. I've been using eBird for about 5 years now, and I cannot speak more highly of this amazing birding tool. So let's get into it. So one of the first things that I want to show you is how to submit a checklist. So once you create an account up here, really pretty easy to do, it's free, you can start submitting checklists. So if you've already made checklists inside of eBird, they're going to show up here. If you've never made a checklist though, there's several ways that we can create a new one. First, we can find it on the map. So enter any region like United States. You could do a specific city, state, county, whatever you want to do. And then it's going to pull up a map, and we'll get to that in a little bit. You could put in latitude, longitude if you have those coordinates, or if you don't have a precise location, you can select an entire county, state, or country. I don't recommend that you do this because eBird does like more precise locations, so it's more valuable for the science side of eBird. But sometimes you just don't have a pinpointed location, like this could have been a historical sighting, so you don't know exactly where you saw it, or you were just driving through some area and you don't have an exact location. Sometimes it's helpful to select an entire county, state, or country, but most of the time you want to have that precise location. So let's go ahead and put in a city. So it's going to bring us to a map, and once it loads, we'll see we've got markers for personal locations that I've made. So like, let's say that you went to a well-known birding hotspot like Hornsby Bend Wildlife Observatory. There's already an eBird hotspot for that, so you don't have to create a new location. We can just click on that hotspot icon and then hit continue. Now, just to show you how to create your own location, you just tap anywhere on the map, and then you go ahead and put in a name. So let's go ahead and go with Hornsby Bend. So once we've got our hotspot selected, we'll hit continue. Then we're going to put in the observation date, and then we need to put in the observation type. So eBird has several different observation types. The first three are for if birding is your primary purpose. So for traveling, if you moved more than 30 meters during your checklist, you're going to use this protocol. Stationary is if you did not move more than 30 meters during your checklist. Historical is if you don't know the exact start time, duration, or distance. You can go ahead and do this. Incidental is if it was not your primary purpose, so you don't have a whole lot of data. You just maybe notice some birds while you're doing something else and you want to log them. There's a few more like banding, pelagic protocol, nocturnal flight count. Most of these are a lot more advanced. Most of the time you're just going to be using these. So let's go ahead and do traveling. So we're going to put in our start time, and then how long we were birding, and then the distance. Then also you want to put in how many people were in your birding party, and then we're going to hit continue. And so we're going to see a list of all the birds that could be found in this area. So I always have it group species by most likely, so that way I get the most likely birds for any particular area up front, because if you think about it, it's most likely that you saw the birds that were most likely found in that area. So it's going to make it just a little bit quicker if you can start with the most likely birds. Then down here you can either skim through, or if you know you saw a specific species, we can go ahead and put its name in right here. So let's go ahead and do snow goose. So then it'll jump it right to snow goose. So then we can put in how many we saw. Then if we wanted to add some details about like how we identified it, there's some extra details that we can add down here, like breeding code and such. These are just a little bit more advanced, and so I definitely recommend that you check out what eBird has to say on these things so that you're inputting it in correctly. And then also we can add some photos once we create this checklist. And so one thing that I do want to say is if you don't know exactly how many birds you found, you can just go ahead and put in an X, and that means any number of birds. Now, of course, we would love to have an actual count on how many birds we saw, just because that's going to be a lot more valuable for the scientific side of eBird than if you just have an X, because we don't know if that's one bird, 1,000,000 birds, 1,000 birds. So an actual count is a lot more valuable, but if you don't know the actual count or don't have a good estimate, you can go ahead and put in an X. Another thing is we can sort birds by alphabetic or taxonomic. So taxonomic is going to have waterfowl first, then we're going to do shorebirds, gulls, hawks. That's how it's going to go. Alphabetic, though, could be a little bit easier to find birds. And then if you want it to show subspecies, you can toggle that on and off. And again, I always like to have it grouped by most likely. Here's some keyboard shortcuts that you might want to pay attention to. And then lastly, before we submit, we want to mark it as either a complete checklist or not a complete checklist. So if we're logging all of the birds we were able to identify, we'll go ahead and log that as a complete checklist. Now, I'm not actually going to submit this because I did not see these birds. Let's go ahead and go over to an actual checklist that I've submitted. All right, so we have an actual checklist that I've submitted. You'll see a stationary count for 10 minutes, and then we had 7 species observed. So once we submit a checklist, there is several things we can do. If this was submitted with eBird Mobile, you'll see your GPS track to see where you walked. If it's stationary, you're just going to see a point like that. I'll link my eBird Mobile tutorial down in the video description below and at the end of this video because it is really helpful and makes submitting checklists a lot easier. In fact, I rarely ever submit checklists through the eBird website. Most of the time, I use the eBird mobile app just because it's much faster. So once we've got our checklist submitted, we can edit birds, we can remove birds, but we can also add media. So if you have some photos of birds that you'd like to submit to eBird, you can go ahead and put these in here. Recently, eBird has allowed you to put in different habitat and soundscape recordings or pictures. So if you have a picture of like the habitat that you're in, you can go and put those all in there for checklist media. That's a fairly new thing that eBird has released. And also we can edit things like the location, date, and effort if you realize that you submitted it wrong. If we want to add some comments to the checklist, we can do that right here. And then we can also, and then these handy buttons down here help you easily submit another checklist for like the same area and date, same location and dates. That way if you've got multiple checklists that you're submitting, it makes it a little bit faster. And then also we can share a checklist with someone. So we'll just go ahead and put in their eBird username or email, and then you can share the checklist with them. So that way if you're birding with multiple people, only one of you has to keep the checklist, and then you can just share it to each other later, and it's going to be linked to both of your guys' eBird accounts. So since we're kind of already here, let's go to the My eBird tab next. So this is where you're going to see all of your stats related to different birds that you've seen. So like we've got my life list right here, complete checklist, species with photos, audio, different ticks if you're into that kind of thing, different stats about like eBirding over time, species by state and province, your latest checklist, latest media. Also, if we go over here on the left, you can manage your checklists, locations, trip reports, which we'll get to in a little bit. Different alerts, so if you want to be alerted about rare birds in a certain area, you can manage those right there. We'll get to more on those in a little bit. If you've got checklists from other platforms, you can import them right there. And then just your eBird contacts for sharing checklists. Also, we can take a look at your profile, sighting list, media that you've submitted. So let's go over to trip reports. So trip reports are pretty cool because you can make a list of all of the different, now trip reports are pretty cool. So like let's say you went on a vacation for a few days, you can put together a list of all the different birds that you saw on your trip. And then you can sort them by like what lifers you got, the checklist from that trip, and just puts together a list of all the birds that you've seen. Plus, it will put together a count of all the different birds that you've seen on that trip. So next, let's go to one of my favorite sections in eBird, and that is the Explore tab. So there's a lot inside of here. First, let's just go to the Explore Species area. So you can put in the name of any bird, and then it's going to bring up some pictures of it. We've got sound recordings right here on the right, a description of it for identification, some stats about this, and then a range map. Now this range map is directly based off of eBird data. So the darker purple means that it is more common there, lighter purple means that it is not as common there. And this is based off of checklists that people have submitted. We've got some more pictures of the bird, some more audio, video, kind of like an online field guide where you can see a bunch of different pictures of a bird. If you want to see how common a bird is, we could put in a more specific location, and it's going to give us a weekly bar chart for every week of the year and how likely it is. So since the Carolina wren is a year-round resident of Texas, there's not going to be a lot of fluctuation. But if we were to change it to like the Canada warbler, we would see that it migrates here in the spring and then the fall, and in the winter it is not found here at all. So next in the Explore tab we have Explore Regions. So you can put in any region in the world. It typically goes by country, state, or county, and it's going to bring up a bunch of different stats about that particular area. So like we can see for this month, 416 species have been seen in Texas, 22,000 checklists, and about 3,500 eBirders. We can see new species that have been seen. Some community targets is a rather new update in the last year or so, I think, of birds that just haven't been seen in this region this month. So if you want to go try and track down one of these guys, it would be a new one for whatever region it is for that month. Typically the bigger the region and the later the month, the more rare these birds are going to be. Like the gray-collared Picard is kind of a skewed result because there was only one bird found in Texas and a lot of people saw it. So that's kind of why it's popping up here, but it's no longer found here. And there's just one individual, so highly unlikely that you're going to find one of these. We can also see recent photos, recent checklists, some recent trip reports. eBird doesn't have a great way to access trip reports or historical trip reports. The only way to see them is recent ones. Some recent audio recordings and then some recent rarities. Now, the one limitation with this little rarities tab here is it only shows them if they have a picture attached. There's another section of the Explore area that gives us a more in-depth way to view rarities, but right here it only shows rare birds with a picture. And this little icon here is going to show you that it has not been confirmed yet. Does not mean that it's not an actual rarity. It just means that the eBird reviewer hasn't had time to mark it as confirmed. Like right there, that is a pileated woodpecker. It's just rare for Bell County, Texas, and the eBird reporter hasn't gotten to mark it as confirmed yet. We can also see which regions inside of a region are species leaders, like Cameron County and the Rio Grande Valley has a lot of species. We can see checklist leaders, these particular hotspots down here. So if you want to visit some of the best hotspots in a region, this is the place to go. Santa Ana, you can see that's the top one. And then also we've got some of the top eBirders for this month. So there's a lot inside of here. I highly encourage you to get in here and start just clicking around and seeing different stuff. Like we've got the illustrated checklist is pretty neat. The bird list can be kind of helpful for researching areas. So next in the Explore tab, we have species maps. So you can put in any bird name. We'll go ahead and do a common raven, and then you can zoom in and it will give you different points of where this bird has seen. So this is based off of actual eBird checklist. We just zoom in here, click on it, and then if we click on this right here, it's going to take us to an actual eBird checklist where this bird was reported. So if you're trying to track down a specific species, this is a good way to do it. Red means that it has been seen in the last 30 days. Blue means that it is an older location or hotspot. And so I use this all the time if I'm trying to track down a specific species and I want to see where this bird is most likely found. Again, I use that all the time and I absolutely love it. Now, if you want to figure out where to go birding and where the best places to go birding is, the Hotspots tab is a great place. You can just zoom in, and all of these hotspots are color-coded. The darker, the more birds that have been seen there. And there's a lot of stuff inside of here. So if we click on this hotspot, we can see what birds have been seen there this month, some recent photos. Recent checklists can be super helpful. So like if I'm trying to track down a specific species, I can see if it's been seen there. So like golden-fronted woodpecker has been seen here. So if I'm really looking to track down that bird, I would click on another checklist and see if it was seen there. So like golden-fronted checklist, I've been seeing golden-fronted woodpecker has been seen on these two checklists, and it turns out it's a really common bird. But for this example, if I wanted to really track one down, Frontier Audubon Center could be a good place to go. There's a few more things in here, like recent audio recordings, things like that. If we wanted a more historical bird list, we could go over here to the bird list on the left. And then for custom time period, we could put in any months. So like if I'm visiting in May and I want to get a feel for what the birds are like in May, go ahead and put that on there, and then it'll bring up all the different birds that have been seen in May. We've got checklists right here in the middle, so if we want to click on that and see an actual checklist from that time, that can be kind of helpful when I'm researching birds. Now I'm in the Hotspots tab all the time when I'm researching new places to go birding or researching trip hotspots for an upcoming trip. Now next we've got search photos and sounds. So this is where we see all the different photos people have submitted to eBird. There's over 84 million of them. Like most pictures and field guides and stuff are going to be great pictures. But the great thing about this is there's a lot of pictures in here that aren't perfect. So like this picture right here, the bird was pretty far away, blending into its surroundings. Not a great picture of it, but that can actually be really helpful because a lot of times you don't see birds in great conditions. So I remember one time I saw what I thought was an American bittern and I wanted to confirm. So I went in here to filters and I saw it flying away. So I checked this flying box and then it shows me pictures of American bitterns flying. Now if I wanted the best pictures, I would sort by best quality, and then it's going to give me the best pictures of American bitterns flying. but the bird that I saw was really far away, so I went to recently uploaded. I could also do least rated if I wanted to get some poorer pictures of it. That way I could look at some field marks from farther away and try to match it up that way. Next is bar charts. Can be kind of helpful for determining how likely a species is in a particular region and when the best time to see them is. So like here for Alabama, we can see black-bellied whistling duck, year-round resident, might be a little bit less common in February. Like the snow goose, they're not very common in the summer at all because they migrate north, so they're going to be a lot more common in the winter. So if you're looking to see a snow goose, don't go in the summer, look for it in the winter. That can just kind of be a good way to get a feel for how common a bird is. And so next we've got the target species. This connects to your life list and then gives you a target list of all the birds that you need for this particular area. So like let's see what birds I haven't seen in Texas yet. So like you can see, my Texas list is 381 species. It's not going to be a whole lot of birds that I have left to see in Texas that are common, but the black burning warbler is one of the most common. And you're going to see the frequency right here. Now you can change this based on time of year. You can do a custom time of year, whatever the current month is, and we can do any region in the world. So like let's go ahead and do Costa Rica since I'm planning a trip there right now. We're going to go ahead and switch this to my world life list, because it's like if we just have it set for my Costa Rica life list, black vulture is on there, but I've seen a black vulture. Now the reason it's on here is because it's for my Costa Rica life list, and I've never been to Costa Rica. So I want to switch this to my world life list, and then it's going to weed out all of the 563 birds that I've already seen, so that way we just get the new lifers that I'm targeting. And this is all based off of actual eBird data, and so you can get a little bit of a feel for how likely certain birds are. Next we have alerts, so you can sign up for rare bird alerts. So when somebody reports a rare bird for any area, you can get an alert for it. So this is good for like if you're going to, let's say, the Rio Grande Valley. You can turn on rare bird alerts for Cameron, Hidalgo, and Starr counties, and that way when anything rare shows up in the Rio Grande Valley, you're going to get a notification in your email that it has showed up. You can also do needs alerts, so if you need a, let's say, black vulture in Indiana, every time someone reports one, it's going to show up in your email. Also, if you want to see rare birds for the ABA area, that's birds code 3 and above, you can subscribe to that. We can also just click on this, and then it's going to give us a whole list of all of the ABA rarities. Same thing for this. If we don't want to subscribe to it and we just want to view it, like let's go ahead and look at Texas. Click on that, hit view right here. It's going to give us a list of all of the birds that have been seen there. We can sort it by date, location, and then if we want to subscribe to the alert, we just click this green button up here, and then we can have the alerts be sent to us daily or hourly. So next we have the top 100, where basically it's just a list of all the top eBirders for any given region. Yard totals are pretty cool because then you can get a list of all the birds you've seen in your yard. Same thing for patch totals, just instead of your yard, it's just local hotspots. Let's go ahead and look at that a little bit more in depth so you get a better idea of it. So I've got all of these different patches. So like for U.S. National Wildlife Refuges, I've seen 257 species. And so you just add different eBird locations as you submit checklists to these places. And then also one more thing that I want to mention here that is super helpful, especially if you're going to a new location or just want to know your backyard birds even more, is this photo and sound ID quiz. So we can start a quiz, and then we put in any region that we want. So since I'm planning a trip to Costa Rica, I put in Costa Rica. We can choose a day, and then what birds we want. So if we want all possible birds, or likely and infrequent birds, if we do all possible birds, it's going to include some rare ones as well. We can also sort by just the most common birds, and then what type of quiz. If we want a sound ID quiz or a photo quiz. We'll go ahead and do a photo quiz, and then it's going to pull a whole list of photos that other people have submitted, and it's going to give you a whole list of 20 different birds, and you're going to try and figure out what they are. So it's going to show you a picture of a bird, and it's going to give you some names of a bird that it could be, or if you know that it's none of those, you can click none of above. Now in this case, I know that's a black vulture, so we'll go ahead and do that, and then you got to rate the image. The rating is really pretty easy. It's just on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best and 1 being the worst, just to give an idea of how good the picture is, so that way when people are trying to access the media, it makes it a little bit easier to sort. Now some questions do have multiple birds, like right here we've got a white-winged dove there, some house sparrows right there. It looks like those are bronzed cowbirds. So since there's a bronze cowbird here, that's probably what it's wanting us to do, but we can also tag it as multiple species if it's unidentifiable. So that is a great way to up your bird identification skills. Now I mentioned it earlier in this video, if you want to submit checklists way faster, definitely want to get the eBird mobile app, so go ahead and watch my tutorial right here to take full advantage of this app, and like I said, it makes submitting checklists way easier. So go check it out, I'll see you there.